You actually led your team on a management buyout to buy Zomato Portugal, and you put your own assets on the line to make this happen.
Let's really do it instead of just talking about it.
You're Portugal's 2022 Entrepreneur of the Year by the same organization that actually rejected your initial startup idea.
You need to love the chaos of everything going to hell and then saying, we'll find our way out of this. No matter how much you prepare, you need to have that combat mode in your head. If you don't have it, then probably this is not for you. I don't think that people are born this way. One specific insight that created a ripple effect that is just beyond belief.
You have a very high agency approach to launching in new cities that you cut down the launch time from 30 days to just 48 hours for a new city.
When you have all of Europe, we'll be validating 2.3 million outlets per month. Most of the restaurants that I visited, they would tell me like, no one will search for it. You don't need anything. Just do it. Like, what is stopping you? Like for entrepreneurs overall, number one, just...
Hi everyone, we're here with Nuno Fernandes today, the CEO and co-founder of Digin. But before we talk about what Digin is, I want to talk about your journey of where you are to from where you started. So you're now the CEO of a big tech company, but you don't have any traditional technical background. In fact, I read that you have a bachelor's in literature translation and an executive MBA. How has that background given you maybe a different approach to other technical co-founders and CEOs?
Hi, Kai. Good morning. Thanks for the invitation. Well, I think it's one of the superpowers that one has is not having exactly the expected training for a certain role. Because when you have, you get a certain sense of confidence of what you need to do. When you don't have, you are always a bit fragile in a way that you don't know exactly what you are supposed to do. So you tend to study more, work harder, try to find unconventional ways to sort a specific problem. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend that to a medical doctor. But in my case, it's something that I always felt that there was something on the entrepreneurship side that I wanted to do. And I always felt that even if we go back to Portugal 25 years ago, it was not exactly the same realm of opportunities as it is today. Things were not exactly in the same position. So on the one side, I would have to find a sure job, something that would pay my bills, but I would try to develop the other skills and the other initiatives. And I think that kind of perfectly into how the country was developing. And with that urge, with that knowledge, with that, I don't know, with that determination to do things, that actually ended up marrying pretty well. The other thing is from a technical point of view, it's really good. It's a second half of the superpower because when you go into a meeting, people they don't take you exactly, especially on a technical meeting, they won't take you exactly at the same level. So that allows you to have not only unconventional ways to sort things, but also like new ways of thinking. And since people don't really feel threatened by the school you have studied or what you've done particularly on that realm, it's almost like it's a new trail.
Like a superpower, hidden superpower.
Exactly, to develop confidence. And it's a gradual one. And it's one that I've seen most often than not colliding into egos and challenges of who knows what, but actually doing something together because of the idea, the vision, and the will to execute it.
And so before Digin existed, it was a company known as Zomato, and you originally joined this company at its launch, and you rose through content, marketing, and sales to become the CEO. Can you walk me through a little bit of what was that journey like?
It was an intense and really fun journey. I often say that was my MBA. The MBA was done there. No need for additional one. That was the experience of a lifetime. So Zomato was and still is one of the largest delivery platforms in the world right now, with presence in India and where it's the largest player there, and obviously a market that is completely beyond any known dimension, especially for us here in Portugal. And when that company joined, it was on the expansion plan of launching different countries in Europe. And I joined when the company had already launched here in Portugal back in 2014. And I joined for an internship. So I was 30 at the time. I wanted to know more to prepare myself. That false feeling that I needed to know and everything would be always preventing me from launching my own initiatives. So I said, maybe I'll join that company. Seems like a new and very, very competitive, very aggressive in terms of ambition. So I'll join, I'll be there for 6 months, I'll do an internship, and post that, I'll have the confidence and finally the skills to launch my own business. My job was essentially to knock at restaurants' doors to collect content. And that would essentially mean understanding what different restaurants were present on different streets, taking photos of them, the menus, understanding kind of the vibe of that restaurant, what it was known for, and collecting all of that information. At the time, less than 15 to 18% of the restaurants in Lisbon actually had a social presence in
Wow.
whatever platform. So it really was something that you couldn't go online to find and source that information. And if you would go, you would find typically the same 200 restaurants, and that would be it. So our role at the time was very interesting because we were doing something that no one else was doing. We were collecting content for the sake of feeding the platform that had both sides, the merchant side and the user side. It was essentially working as a discovery platform. But at the same time, while we were collecting that data, and I think that was the beginning of digging, we just didn't know that at that point, was that we were finding every time that we were collecting a menu and every time that we were collecting data points from restaurants, we were understanding that there was a lot more there than what actually was going into the platform. Then, obviously, long story short, as a decacorn, as you can imagine from Zomato, it was from then post 6 months, instead of leaving the company and starting a new one, I was already deep within launching countries, working in product, sales, launching all types of different things. And I stayed in the company, then I left and joined back. So it was almost a period of 10 years working in food tech before Digin actually took shape.
And what made you change your mind from staying 6 months to then staying 10 years?
Well, I think that a lot of different things. But I would say that the first one was I really want to do things differently from what the traditional companies were doing at the time in Portugal. And I had that drive and I had that ambition. But at the time, I was not seeing the things that we just spoke about. I was not seeing them as superpowers at that point. I was seeing them as something that was probably not enabling me to access some of those things that I wanted to do. So to some extent, it was my lack of confidence saying, okay, now that I found the fit, I don't want to do something else because I found the fit here. Mm-hmm. Here I can work, I can do whatever I want. No one will say, hey, why don't you stop working, like you're making the other ones look bad or anything. Like they just wouldn't care. You want to do it, you have this idea, you want to do it, cool, go do it. So I would have almost, I often called that time at Zomato as a buffet because there was very intense, but at the same time, you were completely free to just ping or sit beside someone and say, hey, you are the leader of that product that is not even on our market. Can we just bounce some ideas of how that's happening and why we feel that that's a good opportunity or why it shouldn't be a good opportunity? And that culture was so open that every single day, this buffet-like culture of just, okay, grab me a seat, we'll talk, let's chat later. It was just so good and so addictive in a way that you really don't know when to stop. And I had the chance to live for a year in India, working in the headquarters and then run some of the international markets from a product point of view. And it was just amazing. Like every single day you would go into a different floor and say, that's where that person is sitting. I didn't know that was not mapped. Okay, cool. I'll go and have a chat. So every day you would open a different box. Every day you learn about different projects that were happening and you didn't even know. You were not even aware of something that was just being developed on that specific basement. And that was so attractive that it really got me hooked in a way that I was not even thinking about anything else. I was just purely enjoying the ride that we were having here.
And how do you think a company cultivates that type of energy and that type of culture? Because it sounds to me like it's more of a startup energy, but to keep that going for 10 years, that's amazing.
It is. I don't believe that it was kept always at the same rhythm or always at the same level. But I think that when you have a purpose and when you can make that purpose clear to most people, then you sort of have you sort of started having this culture. We knew the mission of the company and we knew what we were doing and how we were doing. And I think that throughout the different countries, throughout the different departments, there was a really vivid sense of why we were doing this and what we were doing. Then priorities change, like companies get listed and there's a lot of different things that you can't expect post that startup stage, but also I feel that the quality of the people that you start hiring is immensely important. I think that here in Portugal, I'm not saying that it was easy, but as the market was very, I think that even before 2014, there were a lot of people in the Portuguese market that had a lot of potential, but at the same time, they were not being valued because the economy was on a low end. Things were kind of difficult. And then when a company shows up and says, hey, we have this and you can do this and you are free to do that and you have this type of culture, then you immediately get people completely representing the colors of that company and staying for 10 years. Some of the people that work here at Digin today joined the company, joined Zomato, even before I joined. So that's how addictive and powerful, even though it's a different company, even though it's a different initiative and a different vision. That's how addictive all of the food tech scene actually is.
Then in 2020, so Zomato India, I read, it pulled their support from Zomato Portugal when COVID hit. And you actually led your team on a management buyout to buy Zomato Portugal. And you put your own assets on the line to make this happen. What was this like? What was your head at during this point?
So COVID was a very specific period for everyone. Everyone had, I think, life-changing moments or at least some things that they questioned, or people started thinking like, is this really the way? Should this be the way? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? We already knew that we could do something different. So as a team, we had experience working together. We knew what the market was demanding. We had a really good connection with the brands, and a lot of us had the experience of launching other countries, working at the headquarters. So it was not only myself. So a lot of the team members were actually very well versed in the ways of the company. So when this was a launch, and again, it was a tough decision because the company having to let go of a lot of different markets throughout Europe, and not only Europe, and having to close them and just stay focused in India. It was a good decision from a business point of view. But for them in India, but for us, it was clearly the opportunity to do something different. And we already had like our side notes we know that this could work, this could be done differently. And then we just started saying, okay, cool. So let's really do it instead of just talking about it. Now it's a golden opportunity to do it. So obviously it's very risky. A lot of the the management team was the one doing the buyout. And those 5 members, they put a lot on the line, from personal assets to things that they had, things that they didn't have at the time, to make sure that we could buy the transition. And essentially that meant the possibility of acquiring all the data that was generated since the beginning, because that was a very powerful statement to just start our journey, and also the right to use the name. Because as you know, starting a company, if you start new, there's always this recognition issue. And if you were actually the ones who built it here, the same faces, the same will, the same vision, using some of that had a really important part on opening some doors.
And then after you bought out Zomato, there's a 2-year transition period, if I'm correct, between Zomato becoming Digin. What was that like, and what was it like to work on something for so long before being able to launch it?
It's incredibly fun. It always depends if you like changes or if you don't like. And it's impossible in a team of 20, 10, 30, like whenever you have a team of more than 10 people, it's impossible to have them all in the same exactly, completely aligned in terms of all wanting change. There's always someone that will say, but I liked things better before. Like there's always someone who will take the pain of saying, I don't think we should go that way. Since we were a team of 20 already at the time, we were not all living at the same stage. So some people pointed out, and correctly, that some people were working for Zomato, some were working for Zomato Portugal, and some were already working for Digin at the same time. So that's how complicated in terms of culture it was to really make sure that we kept our ongoing daily activities for the sake of revenue, for the sake of supporting the market and the clients, and at the same time implementing a vision that would represent a cut with a lot of the things that we knew before. So it's challenging, but as long as, number one, you like change, like if you don't like change, no matter how much things and how many plans you have in line, you need to love the chaos of just getting things upside down and everything going to hell and then saying, cool, we'll find our way out of this. no matter how much you prepare, you need to have that combat mode in your head. If you don't have it, then probably this is not for you. And then communication, like no matter, since we can't all be exactly at the same mental wavelength, and we all have our different questions and different things to sort out, it's really important to have communication, to have sessions where we are really going deep on, okay, this is what we were doing, this is what we are doing now, because there is a meaning, so that later on we can do this. And every single time feeding evidences of what we were doing as something that would really increase the value, the recognition, the viability of the company as a whole. It's difficult because you can't progress at the same speed. You need to stop, communicate, align, then take another step, then stop again, and do it. But it's but again, it's fun times, and I wouldn't change them.
And going back to that combat mode that you were talking about, is this something that you think that people are naturally born with, or can they grow this and develop this? And how do you try to find a team of people that have this combat mode?
I don't think that people are born this way. I think that as you have struggles and as you discover things that are hard to do in life, you tend to say, okay, this is a fight worth fighting. This is a challenge that I'm willing to put my energy. And sometimes you just say that this is clearly not the way. I don't feel that people have a natural way of saying I'm prone to do this challenge or I'm not prone to do this challenge. What I believe is that you have to find the common challenges. Everyone has this mode as long as this aligns with their own mindset, with their own will. So what we manage here, and our unfair advantage, is that the people that are working with us, most of them have 7 year plus of food tech. So regardless of being leaders, regardless of being very dedicated operators or whatever their role is, this is the challenge, and these are the challenges that in a way or another they want to face and they want to do. And so I believe that that's something that you just have to find your own sweet spot. You just have to find the place. It's not the place where you are comfortable or uncomfortable, but the place where the challenges align with what you want to do. And here we managed to find that. But again, it's an unfair advantage because it was tested already before. So we knew it already that was a winning team.
And so before we get a little bit deeper into Dig-In, can you talk about, because as someone living in Portugal, I see it quite often when I'm making reservations for tables, I always see Dig-In pops up. But for someone who doesn't live in Portugal, who hasn't heard of Dig-In, what does your company do in simple terms?
So what we do is basically we collect and analyze all data from the restaurant ecosystem. So the Eureka channels, we capture every single data point, and then we return that information into several different ways. For a consumer, it can be a booking, it can be a restaurant discovery information, it can be a menu type of menu match with the specifications of that individual. For FMCG brands, can be understanding where they are present, where they are not present, how are other brands working, and the type of digital presence that they have. And for restaurants, is getting all of the knowledge that is already within the digital space and translating that into insights that the restaurant can actually work. So we are a data company that then serve all the same data, but in different ways to all these different entities.
So all those insights that you collect, what are they, do you ever find some that they are just interesting or that you hadn't thought about before that have become really useful to consumers and to restaurants?
Yes, a lot of them. I'll probably say that every single day we find singular things and really fun things. Just for you to get a note, I won't name any specific brands. I'll just leave it open. But there are, within the soda, water, juice, coffee, and beer and wine, essentially you always have two big players, especially in Portugal, you always have two big players. And with one of these sectors, just by analyzing the outdoor photos of the places, we understood that the brand that was actually present there at the umbrellas and at the entry points of those spaces was not very well maintained. And usually those contracts are very expensive to change. So we went to the other brand and we said, this is the opportunity where you can leverage your brands and try to present a different solution. And so they saved a ton of money that I would have to commercially spend just for the sake of ego to understand that that is not the way that a brand should be treating their clients. So just by doing this disruption, it created the validation for the restaurant that it is fair. They should really take care of our image because we are also representing and advertising them. And this created so many waves because it then went down to users, went down to restaurants, went down to other FMCG brands that started saying, okay, we want to understand more. So that's just one specific insight that created a ripple effect that is just beyond belief. There are a lot of funny things that you can understand just by analyzing menus, the type of comments that sometimes are made on the menu by the restaurants themselves, seeing that specific locations, the type of restaurants that open over time in that specific location. If you are into data almost from an archaeological point of view, you can see all the different layers and understand the patterns that go back 10 or 11 years. And when you look at it, you have such a rich and amazing cluster of Lisbon or Portuguese history, just that on data. So it's amazing.
And for those insights, are you going and your teams manually seeking them out, or are restaurants coming to you asking for you to do a data analysis of them? How does that work?
So from a commercial point of view, we reach out to restaurants, and we have the availability for restaurants to reach out to us. Same with brands, to understand the potential of their own information, connecting their own data sources that they already have that are internal and not just theirs. What we do is collecting all of the information that is available online. That is the one that we collect. Then if they want to plug in other internal data sources, imagine that they want to connect their internal HR system with us so that we can understand the shifts that they are doing, how is it working, and how it is connecting with something else. All of those internal data pools we can also connect, and we have this availability to talk with them. But essentially, we first have a big data, a big layer of data that we collect online. We create our own models to collect that, to work cell to cell, to map every cell in the world and map it against our own validation mechanisms. And then what we do is we go out on the fields to validate some of those manual insights, or where we see that information is lacking or that is just not making sense for any reason. We do have kind of just data checks to make sure that what we are getting is really the correct answer to the.
And for those models, how are you developing them, especially as AI is growing? Are you integrating new things every day? And how are you keeping up to date when so many new tools are coming out?
It's always a challenging conversation. You have a meeting in a month and you say, okay, cool, we are working with this framework. These are the tools. This is what we're doing. The next month when you meet, you already have the entire team saying, oh, but we actually tried this one. Oh, but we did this one. And what about that one? So what we tend is not to over-engineer our solutions. We tend to have, this is almost like a fallback in our brains. If tomorrow, like most of these tools would not be available, how would we still be a business? So it's important to see AI as a leverage of what we are doing, but not as the only door to what we are doing. And essentially, we have a way that if most things fail, we, even with a map out on the street, with the same mapping and with the same information that we have, we would have the same outcome at a very high price point, but we would have kind of a similar outpoint. It would just be different in terms of time and money. Obviously, saying that, we use a lot of commercial programs and solutions, and always with the mindset of saying, okay, how can we replicate this, develop and adapt to our own models? So essentially, we do a tryout phase where we already have our own models that are not as fast, they are not as efficient as others. Obviously, we are a team of 20, so there are limits. We try it out. We see how that works. We do pilots to understand how that would scale, what would be the cost, what are we actually gaining with that solution. And then once it's finalized, okay, cool. This is a good solution. Now we'll replicate it and we'll use it inside with our own models. So it never stops. It's a model that never stops, but you can really get improvements in terms of speed. You can get improvement in terms of quality and pricing. So you can offer the same insights at a lower pricing, which then becomes more accessible to restaurants also.
And what are the top tools or AI that you're using right now, especially for your models? Are you creating these from scratch from code, or are you using third-party websites and workflows to create agents?
So it's, as I said, we always try out different things, and then so that's a thing. Every single week there are new things being tried out. The ones that we decide to keep, we then replicate. So it's always with a view at having everything in our own orchestration and not onto someone else's agents. So we always do the work of trying it out, seeing if it works, pushing it to see the limits and where it breaks or what are the limitations. And then we start developing our own resources. What we are using essentially, and since we do a lot of image recognition, there is a lot of training that we have to do continuously to make sure that a soda brand is detected on the can, that a coffee brand is detected on every cup. So there's a lot of elements that we continuously have to train. That train has to be fast and has to be cheap. And so that's one of the things where training the models is where we invest a lot of time and a lot of resources. A lot of it is dependent on image recognition because that's where you have a lot of feedback. Then when you are processing this information, and not only for Portugal, but also right now, Spain, Germany, and also starting to enter in other countries in Europe, this means essentially trying to, when you have all of Europe, we'll be validating 2.3 million outlets per month. And with all of the information that is generated on the websites, social media, and platforms, booking platforms, delivery platforms. So just collecting all of that information, processing it, and then the final step where we also use a lot of different tools is to do the data validation to make sure that it is right. Because as you can imagine, different tools and different marketplaces will have different information. So making sure that everything is correct. Just in terms of name, you can have the same restaurant can have different names throughout the platforms. So just reconciling the information and doing sanity checks, it's a place where we have to use a lot of resources because manual power alone would not be enough.
And I want to talk a little bit more about those image recognition software that you're talking about, because I've seen it in person and it is amazing, and I haven't seen anything else like it. Because we met at a food tech conference and networking event, and you showed it in person, and it was just mind-blowing how this AI was able to analyze so many details of these restaurants that humans wouldn't pick up on.
So again, I have to admit that it's a bit it's out of laziness. When we were collecting information in restaurants, we would have to be looking at the place and saying like, I only have 5 minutes to do this in an efficient manner. What can I note down? What can I write down? And we were saying, oh, that place serves that type of beer. Oh, they do have that brand of alcohol there in the shelf. Oh, that's the POS that they are using. This is the brand, and this is the team that is doing the technical support to them. Just imagine how important it is to know who is doing the technical supply and support for a restaurant. If you know that entity and if you map that entity, the next time that you want to pitch, you don't go and pitch directly to the restaurant. You just influence the technical support to make sure that it is aligned, it is not aligned, and what are the technical needs of the restaurant. If that is sorted, then the commercial piece is easier than anything else. So we were just doing it out of laziness. There's only so much that our eye can capture and note down, like in an efficient manner. So by doing that recognition, people would say, and back in the day in Zomato, they would say, it's not efficient to have so many people out on the street collecting data. That will never be a business model that works. And we were actually feeling at the time that no, this can be actually a business model that works. Not with this type of company and this type of operation, but the business model alone could and should work. And we were essentially proving it. We were saying that every image that is published online has a lot of different data points. So we can actually put a price tag into every image that is published online. We know how much information we can extract from those. And just an outside picture of a restaurant will tell you a lot of things. And before, we were kind of using those images to say, for a user, like, okay, it seems to be this place. I got here. Google Maps took me here, and it seems to be the place. And that was it. You were just using the outside picture to give like a sense of spatial recognition. I'm at the right place. But when you go and you zoom and you see the beer brands present there, the coffee brands, the outdoor seating, the type of place, and even the small little stamps that they have on the window will tell you what associations they have, what marketplaces are there present. So you would look into a photo and say, yeah, this is the place, one data point. And we said, no, that's actually a source of dozens of different data points. And when you started looking into this, and when you really started to scale that information, because taking that manually from a picture does take a lot of time. It really takes a lot of time to process hundreds of pictures every month for each restaurant. But when you start having scale in the models to process this, that's when you can understand that just by doing a simple analysis that will take us 5 to 10 minutes to run from all of the images, all of the reviews, all of the menus on all of the platforms, will actually surprise even the restaurant owner on how much we know about their business, even if it's going or decreasing in popularity, or even how the business is going overall. Those are all insights that we can extract.
It's amazing. And then with those insights, when you're selling them to the restaurants, would they be using those for their Google Maps or for the websites, or what would they be using those for?
So I would say that there are probably three different lines where this is interesting for restaurants. Number one is restaurants that are opening. If you are opening a new restaurant, regardless of having a previous restaurant or just starting with a new idea, you want to make sure that for any other business that exists, you would try to do some research and you would try to have some information. In the F&B industry, sometimes it's a bit different. Restaurants will tend a lot to open even if they don't have any information of where, because they find a good real estate opportunity, because they have someone in the family that cooks well and that they really have like this family recipes and they know what to do. And that's not very professional. Like, it's good because the quality is good, like the experience is good, but sometimes you have really good experiences, but businesses that are not sustainable because they were just picked in the wrong area. So businesses that are opening, they are now looking in, and there's a new generation, obviously, of restaurant owners that are saying like, we wouldn't open a clinic, a dental clinic, without having information of who's there, what they are doing, price points, satisfaction, and what's our unique value proposition. So we'll do exactly the same. So before opening a restaurant, getting a hold of us to understand where, how, their idea, and try to match it. That's a first and a clear one. There's no question about it. You really need to do it. Then the second one is for restaurants that are already operating and they want to understand their business. They want to do something else for their business. They want to find where they can streamline operations, where they can scale, where they can do better. And they are really concerned with the restaurant as it is perceived today. Before doing any type of like additional advertising or additional actions, they want to get a hold of data instead of just saying, okay, cool, have 1,000 years on advertisement and try to solve this. It's actually the opposite. Okay, let's get to the bottom reason of why this is happening. And that's the second. And then the third one is a lot based on, I won't say that it's just ego, but it's almost benchmarking and comparison between restaurants. They want to know how their competitors are doing. They just want to know. They want a monthly follow-up and insight of how they are doing, comparing with their competitors, to understand what they are missing, what they are doing right, what they are doing wrong, insights to their own staff, who is doing well, who is not, who can be improved in terms of the service that they are providing, and looking at those metrics. In hotels and in the hotel industry, this is already a staple. This is already a basic. You would see all of the reviews. You would reply to all of the reviews. You would get the sentiment analysis from a month to another to understand what's happening there. It goes just beyond comprehension that a hotel is not doing this. But in the restaurant industry, it's slower than 20% at this point. So most restaurant owners, even to such a small technical competence as it is answering a review, this is not a priority. This doesn't go into their priority stack at all. So just making sure that this comparison is made, that they understand what they are doing and where they can do better. This is probably the third component.
And because your company is covering the whole gastronomic journey, from these insights to being able to help book reservations, all of this, I don't know if you can share any numbers with me, but even if you can't, what are your top revenue streams and were they surprising to you? Were they what you expected?
So in terms of obviously data itself is the number one revenue stream. We then build the operational interface because restaurants need it, and because it was our legacy, because restaurants need it, and because sometimes they really don't have any other solution in terms of the price point or in terms of using data. But again, they are just a replication of our data and not actually the opposite. So data is our number one revenue stream for sure. What we weren't expecting, and specifically in Portugal, is the low adoption of some technological services that even if we were doing them in the past, we were not looking at our own data in the same way. So just for you to get a notion about the landscape, there's more than 80,000 restaurants in Portugal. Out of those 80,000 restaurants in Portugal, less than 5,000 use any booking engine, any.
Wow.
So our own solutions or any other company that you can think of, international, national, even their own developed booking systems, and some restaurants or some chains have their own internal booking system, less than 5,000. When we're talking about booking, we're talking about it's not a new technology. It's not something that is challenging. And it's essentially like a calendar type of availability and slots, which is very easy to implement. And it saves you. It's clear how it saves you a lot of time and how the return on investment for that is very clear, regardless of paying 20 euros a month or even 200 euros. Even anything within that window will actually turn into something very profitable, very meaningful and profitable investment from your side, because you can receive your bookings while you are sleeping, because you can go on vacation, have your restaurant closed, and already have the first day when you open already fully booked, pre-booked. So like you have the informations and the CRM, so you can connect to those clients. So that the number of things is just amazing and simple. So it is surprising to me that instead of 30,000 plus restaurants using booking engines and with a lot of different competitors, a lot of different pricings and business models, it is surprising to me that still to this date, the penetration is less than 5,000. This for me is more of portraits of the digital skills and the management skills of the restaurants than anything else. And that's why it's important to sell the technology, to prepare and present the technology. But it's also important to have obviously moments where we shout about it and where we can sort of create awareness and convey more information about this. That's one, but also that we can work together. And what do I mean by working together? 15 different startups or any other type of company for that matter is knocking at a restaurant door that are already serving a lot of different suppliers. It is difficult for you as a restaurant to say, let me look at that solution and now at that solution. And how do I manage all of these different suppliers? So working together means creating workflows where for restaurants, they can work with one single entity almost. And then they just drop down or they just navigate between one and another. And that's a work that we as startups have to do, being able to work with each other so that restaurants can see that this is a way. If we are increasing just the layers of time and suppliers that they are dealing with, that will probably not be the most relevant way to grow.
And are you saying that that's just in Portugal where booking, like people aren't using the booking systems, or in all the cities that you're in, is that only a very small percentage?
What I see is that people want just having a booking system is a complete differentiator for restaurants, because most people, not only our users, want to do online bookings. So that's it. So what this really means is that there are 5,000 restaurants that have a complete unfair advantage over others, because you have a community of nationals, foreigners that are already using online booking as their first choice. Mm-hmm. Calling a restaurant is the second or the third, but the first one is doing searching online. I don't remember the name. Is this the name? Oh, it is. Oh, this is the restaurant. It has an online booking button, and I will press it. Doesn't matter if it's Digin or anything else. They just want to have the booking without calling the restaurant because it's 6 a.m. because they are planning their day. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. But that's just the type of convenience that you want. If you want to socially interact with a restaurant, you would save those skills for the moment that you are sitting at the restaurant. Then you want to call the chef and call the owner and have all of it. It's not really a phone call that will make a difference in terms of having the whole restaurant experience. It's not the phone call. And I think we as users, as consumers, we got that. It's 100% clear for us. From 60 years old to 15 years old, I think that's clear. So what is not clear is that for restaurants, this is a complete and unique enabler. We see other cities where we have more conversion in terms of the percentage being higher. And in Spain, we do have the main cities in Spain have a higher coverage in terms of online booking, for instance, than what we have in Portugal. But the number of restaurants that we have is completely huge. We probably have a huge and very diverse supply, and maybe the market is not fully aligned with the type of supply that we have.
And I imagine that as you were starting out, this must have been even harder because you're quite a pioneer in growing Lisbon's restaurant digitalization. And now as AI and tech is becoming more mainstream, like people are starting to come around to the idea of digitalizing everything. But when you started out, was this a lot harder to try and break that mental barrier almost?
was very hard. I remember most of the restaurants that I visited, they would tell me like, no one will search for restaurants online. Like no one ever. We just have clients here. We know that the top things that you would hear. We know of all of our clients. They come here because other clients refer to them. We don't have and will never be online. We are fully dedicated to be offline. And in some cases, you would even hear people inside of Lisbon. Like there was a set of restaurants that would say, no, no, no. And we heard that the internet is shutting down in the next 10 years. So you would hear those and you wouldn't even have an answer to those type of things. You would just be standing there trying to collect the information and you would take 2 minutes to process like, what is happening here? How is one thing connecting with another? So I think that we have amazing settings. In Portugal, we have amazing settings. We do have amazing settings. There's nature, the food, the gastronomy, the culture creates an amazing setting. Anyone who comes here to live or to travel or to just discover during an afternoon will be amazed by the quality, the context of what we serve. That is amazing. We don't want to lose that. We must keep that. But at the same time, we have to make sure that this is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in the past, a lot of decisions for opening a restaurant were actually taken on the premises of saying, I don't really have anything else to do and I know how to cook. Then I'll open a restaurant. And that created a barrier that you feel now with new generations but the amount of, and even the simple fact of collecting pictures from a menu. I would have restaurants in Alfama. And as you know, the streets are very narrow. I would be collecting pictures in one restaurant and the other one just beside it. They would say, like, don't put the photos online with prices. And I said, why not? Because if you put it online with prices, they will know. And then they will copy the same prices and they'll take a few cents. And the restaurant could literally just by stepping out, see the menu and see the prices because it was there. Open. And the first thought that you have is, they are kidding with us. Like, they just don't want to facilitate the information and they are saying this. And you would have this over and over again. So it was not a running joke. It was actually part of the mentality.
Right.
And a mentality that was already established to service a lot of people. It was not only for locals, it was especially for tourists. So it was already made to connect and serve a lot of people. And they were still thinking this way. So this was back in 2014. Luckily, a lot of things have changed. But as you see by the numbers, you have a huge potential of having a lot of things facilitated. And you have a huge potential of having restaurants with actually margins that are more attractive because some of these tools will save them a lot on their margins that are not traditionally very, very high.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that Portuguese culture that you're talking about, because even from a consumer standpoint, there's a big Portuguese culture around community and going out for meals with your family and your friends, for dinners, for lunches. And you've made a point that I've seen online that Dig in Portugal is really tailored to this Portuguese culture. And as you started expanding to new cities, have you had to change this approach and change it to their cultures?
There's one undeniable fact, which is that the population from Lisbon and Porto drives a lot of consumption in a lot of different places in Portugal. So, for instance, now we have a spike of consumption and app use in the Algarve, but those are not essentially locals. Those are people that travel from Lisbon and to Porto. They are now doing their vacations. And they are basically using the app because they are already used. This is the standard that they are used to, and this is the way that they want to use. Obviously, there were things that we had to change in terms of our process. So, for instance, if a restaurant is closed 4 months in a year, and in Algarve that happens, there's really no use on running twice a month all of the information and trying to reconcile. There won't be a relevant difference on that aspect. That won't really change. Even if you are trying to sell a yearly subscription, that won't work as well. They'll say that for 4 months, that doesn't make sense. So from a commercial point of view, from a data collection point of view, from the insights that you are getting, you need to have this understanding of what is actually the flow within that city or within that region and how it changes over the year. Even when you work with municipalities, a lot of times every single time, municipalities lack this type of information. They don't know exactly what is the number of restaurants that they have, the diversity, the type, the cuisine, etc. So essentially, by doing that and that exchange, but there's a dip here. You know why that dip happens? It's because there's this festival, and then people won't go at restaurants because there's a festival taking place there. For instance, booking in restaurants completely dip over the Santos
Oh, really?
time in Lisbon because people are so focused on going out to the
Right.
traditional street-based festivals that they are not going to restaurants, especially out of those zones, in the same numbers. And so you have a dip, which is not related specifically to the time of the year. It would be a good time for consumption, definitely, but it just puts out some of the restaurants and the booking mechanism as a whole, because for that traditional event, you wouldn't really book a table, or that's something that you just don't have. It's more of a casual thing. So having
Mm-hmm.
that dip in June and July is very. You would look at the data at the first sight and to say this doesn't make sense, but there's actually something specifically that has to be taken into account, and that's what we do in every city and every country where we are launching and collecting data.
Wow. And as you're launching in new cities, because I read this thing that you and your team, you have a very high agency approach to launching in new cities, that you cut down the launch time from 30 days to just 48 hours for a new city. Was that like a shoot for the stars, land along the moon, that type of, other way around, but that type of thing?
Well, it was launching before in the old model. Launching a city would be an operational, I won't say nightmare, I would actually say paradise because I loved it. But it would be like a panic room, everyone sitting there, maps being printed, flows and routes being set up, and everything else. People being deployed, extra people being hired just for the sake of the launch and everything else. And then the processing time of all of the information that was collected, because that was not real time. And what we believed was that was good for a model where 20% or less was present online. But what about a model where more than 90% is present online? How much of the work can we do? So now, in the first 24 hours, we get almost 90% of the work.
Wow.
That is actually from sourcing, setting, creating the flows for the information to be crawled, enriching with the information, and getting the validation. So that is done almost in the first 24 hours. And then the rest, the remaining day, is for finding and fixing the things that were left. It's for the additional 10%. But if you would just want to have like a really good 90% perception of a market, that would mean for 24 hours for us right now.
Wow. And as you cut that time down massively, are you launching in a lot of new cities at a very fast pace? How many cities are you in right now?
Completely. Right now, it's 3 countries completely mapped.
Wow.
100%. So for Portugal, Spain, and Germany. And we are now launching other countries in Europe. And we aim by the end of the year to have all of Europe captured. So that's the objective.
That's a big goal.
So there's a couple millions there.
Yeah.
But again, the insights that you get when you have that scale are also even more interesting, because then imagine a brand like a soda brand or a beer brand that has an international footprint can then start saying like, I want to understand not only this market, but I want to understand how these markets compare. And one of the things that as you are doing something which is a bit new in essence, because our competitors traditionally on what we are doing now would be PwC, Kantar, Nielsen, like consulting companies that would run studies on specific restaurants. But as you know, 30 restaurants in Caixotre do not really apply to the whole dimension of what Portugal is. So doing that sample-based doesn't make sense for the fragmented restaurant industry. You really need to do it. You either do it all, or you're probably lacking a lot when you are just doing a sample. So you need to have it all. You need to have the full cohort so that you can analyze it and take your guesses, your informations, your insights. And when you compare, we had to develop a lot of our own digital scores, digital assessment, our own metrics, so that even brands that were not used to having this approach could have something to compare. So now they can compare markets. They can compare between Lisbon and Madrid.
Right.
They can compare between Madrid and Berlin and saying, okay, cool. So actually this is prone to work a lot better in that specific city because they have a set of skills, a set of customer satisfaction, a set of suppliers that is completely in line with the product or the service that we want to launch. So that just creates
bit of a network effect.
Universe of possibilities.
Yeah, and as more restaurants join, then it's better for the other restaurants that are already there.
Exactly.
So just to wrap this up, there was one extra point that I found online and I couldn't find much information about it. But someone wrote this article about how you were Portugal's 2022 Entrepreneur of the Year by the same organization that actually rejected your initial startup idea.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. As I told you, 20 years ago, we didn't have the same opportunities that we have now. They were completely different. So when things started warming up in Portugal, I think that Startup Lisboa was probably the first entity where that created enough solutions for me to see my dreams becoming a reality in the future. So they were the manifestation of something that could happen in the future. So when they opened like their first cohort and they selected 10 companies, and this was unheard of, I said, I want to be there. I have to be there. That, again, with a lack of knowledge and pursuing that knowledge that I had to be perfectly competent and knowing everything to launch a business, I said, this is the incubation process that will allow me to remove the things that I don't know, or add the things that I don't know. So I didn't manage to apply to the first one. I applied to the second one, which is back in 2012 maybe. And in 2012, they heard I was shivering, I was shaking. It was absolutely nerve-wracking. I hate to speak in public. Well, I used to. Right now, I can't really say that I.
Yeah, I've heard your presentations. They're great.
But I was really like shaking. And the three guys assessing the panel assessing me, they were looking at me and saying, okay, cool. Like, you just need to get it done. And I said, yeah, but I wanted to have like, you don't need anything. Just do it. Like, what is stopping you? Like, literally just doing. What do you need? You need a contact in this to do that. You have zero need of anything to be done additional. There is nothing that we can do for you. Like, you have all of the ingredients. And that left me with okay, so, but are you selecting me or not? And then they had this very nice email saying like, unfortunately, doesn't really have a fit. And I was completely, I agree. In hindsight, and even at that week, I agreed. And the funny thing was, when I was selected for that as a finalist for that award, the email that I got was exactly from the same person who sent the other email. So I missed on searching her email, and I was searching on all of my inboxes. It went to my personal one where I had that application. And while I was searching that, I got the other email. And that was the funny thing about it, because it was almost like 10 exact years from one point to another.
Wow, that's amazing. And so just to finish this, the scene is yours. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience today?
Yeah, a couple of things. I would say that for entrepreneurs overall, and people looking to start a business, number one, just remove the fluffiness and just do it. There are obviously a lot of things that won't work in the ecosystem, that they just don't work. They are broken. Like, the institutions take too long, blah, 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 blah. We already know it. But this is way better than what it was 20 years ago. It's way better than what it was 10 years ago. So Portugal is an amazing market for you to launch, to test. I know that a lot of things don't work exactly as you want, but Portugal is an amazing market for someone who is living here, for someone who is traveling, for someone who is just staying here for a couple of years. Is an amazing market to test, to try, to just connect. People are more willing to connect and do connections and do intros and be available than what you actually think. In 1 month, I don't know a lot of countries where you can just drop emails and have connection in that month with the manager of the beverage company, of a restaurant group, and everything else. So it is amazing, and we should use it. And since the diversity, the cultural diversity is so big and so interesting, but all within a 5-hour distance from north to south. If you have the right mindset, in a month, you can do what would take you years to do in the UK, months and years to do in the US, and you can actually make it here as a test, as something that works, as something that you won't have these elements in any other part of the year. Obviously, there's a lot that you have to do, and there's a lot that you have to work, but the ingredients are here. You don't need to do an extra. You don't need to do an extra validation. You don't need to do an extra workshop. Just get it done and start now. And I think the conditions are amazing. And for the other part is, if there's anyone in the restaurant industry, reach out to us, lose this fear of looking into your own data because you know that you had a bad review or you know that something didn't work. So you are now trying to deal by avoiding that, which is on your profile, or trying to remove your Google profile because you don't want bad opinions to be there. And take into account then more than 75% of the reviews that are written are actually positive. So don't take those outliers that happen in every business to every professional as the rule, and just look at them professionally and say, okay, this is 0.1% of my universe. And what actually went wrong here? And how can I fix this, even in terms of perception, so that other users, when they see it, they'll look at it and say, it was a bad day, but actually the way he turned things around left me convinced that if I have a problem, he will have a solution. So just remove this fear of rejection that a lot of times exists and embrace the solutions that are there in the market.
Thank you so much. And how should anyone reach you? What's the best way to contact you?
LinkedIn, sometimes it can take a week or something, but LinkedIn is the easiest way to reach out. And you can find me, Nuno, dig in, you'll probably get it right. Usually if it takes a week, but I'll get back to you.
Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap.